So, since time is short, since it's raining cats and dogs, and since we are more or less at the end, as we said yesterday, let's meet briefly at the end, basically, in order to compare notes and in order to have a bit of sharing of what is the feeling about this edition of the EDD19. What I can tell you is that numbers are quite important in the sense that in terms of presence, we are close to 9,000, which means more than last year and last edition. That we have 180 accredited journalists, that we have 50 partnerships with media. So all this just to say that in terms of quantitative targets, it's quite impressive. The exact figures, you'll get it through the usual way, but this is, let's say, the situation which is today. Second, I found personally, but also with all the colleagues around, and having seen the participation to all kinds of debates, being in big auditorium, in the labs, in the workshop, that mean high participation in the sense not just listening, but actively participating, and a lot of questions about these inequalities. I have to say, with a lot of link between Europe and what is going on elsewhere in the world, which is a bit something that, in my view, is particularly logical, is understandable, because the idea to choose this, let's say, subject was not only because it is, as explained, pertinent and strategic per se, but also because it reveals a sort of more easily communality between what is the feeling about the ordinary life in Europe, in particular for young people, and the perspectives, and what is seen to be an important action worldwide in order to attack structural causes of poverty, of discrimination, etc., etc. So I think this is a second element I would like to underline, which has been visible in many panels, sometimes called development in transition, sometimes seen from a cultural point of view, sometimes seen from sectorial point of view, like the social, the environmental, the peace, etc. So I think, I mean, without now improvising an evaluation on quality and substance, because this would be, unfair, but certainly the subject has taken. And third, also a certain number of, let's say, actors, in particular linked to the culture, this sort of link that we wanted to do between the colloquium that we had on Sunday and Monday, and then the restitution of the result here, has produced some consequences which were going beyond the mere debate on the restitution. Culture has been present a bit everywhere. I gave a certain number of interviews to a certain number of press, or simply talking to people. Very much this link between culture inequalities have been, let's say, underlined by many. So meaning, from my point of view, but this is my personal opinion, that what I strongly imagine, and I think that one of the most powerful response to societal crisis, say that in this way, and to societal problems like inequalities, receive on culture, let's say, a powerful response. And therefore this has been perceived by many, and they asked explicitly, how we can use culture, what do you intend to do with culture. Last point, as usually, a lot of expectation from what the European Union can do, and in particular the European Commission. This is logic because it is also linked to the moment of transformation. At the end of this week, maybe we will know the name of the one which has been designated by the European Council to be president of the next Commission. So it is obvious that this perception of the link between what we are talking about here and the expectations from the Union and the changeover which is in the making is also perfectly seen, including, I have to say, because this was another aspect which was, cutting across different debate, is the result of the European elections. Sometimes not exactly said in this way, but meant in this way. How is the perception of the Europeans? What do you expect the European societies to in reacting? The panel yesterday that we had with Antonio Vitorino and others on migration and the Global Compact, for example, but was not just linked to migration, was linked at, how Europe is seen in all that, in dealing with the global issues that we are dealing in the framework of the Agenda 2030. So, few elements, not in a particular order, that I can take out of from these 2 days, with the numbers at the beginning and some flesh on some sub-item. But happy to have your views, what you saw that, and in your perception and your suggestion also in terms of how to think next edition, because immediately after we will start thinking at what we'll do next year and how we can connect with the new institutional setting, for example. That's it. Thank you very much. Now questions, please.
Time for a few questions. François Baudry from People TV and Business Africa.
Can speak in French.
A microphone for the speaker, please.
Il faut toujours être modeste.
Well, we need to be modest about paternity, if you like. There's biological paternity, which is often certain, and then politico-intellectual paternity, which is something different. I would say yes, but I talked to Louis Michel, who is the co-author, about this. He's recognised by Jean-Claude Juncker. Jean-Claude Juncker made that acknowledgement yesterday. Yes, we're happy because the child has grown progressively, and now it really is part of the debate on world development. It's on the agenda. There are many people who want to come along and discuss this. And thirdly, because these subjects have developed from being something more generic, what to do about development, to the global challenge, women's issues, etc. So I'm very happy with this. I'm thinking already, though, about what we would do in the future. And my personal idea, which is not necessarily important, but which I'll leave as my legacy to those who will come after me, is that for the next edition, we should think about better involving civil society. We've got the marketplace now with the showcases, and we should transform that into a marketplace proposing projects. That's an approach that I've shared already with some of you. I think that's what we should be thinking about for next time. But yes, it's a fine event, a lot of participation, a lot of young people, a lot of hope, so we hope not to disappoint.
One follow-up, because un follow-up parce que vous avez
Well, just a simple question. Today, the theme is reducing inequality, but across from that, you have the reduction of the budget. Now, how can you reconcile that? Reducing the budget, but as far as the European Commission is concerned, we propose to substantially increase the budget for external expenditure. So we're going against the trend, but we have asked for more. And up till now, I didn't see any major negative reactions. Secondly, the reductions are unequal. I mean, France is progressing, in fact. Spain is also increasing. Now, in the European family, there are ups and downs, and the trend is not all at the same pace. But there is a strong commitment, and in the Commission we'll be continuing to push for this, so that they take the 0.7% seriously. Secondly, the experience of the 2030 agenda has shown that it's not just a question of money. The discussion on inequalities is the proof of that. It's a question of good policies, first and foremost. Money helps, but good policies, good choices. Without that, yes, okay, money is useful, but it's not going to do everything. And thirdly, to ensure that we have more than we have, Well, that's the very philosophy of the external investment plan. Use the money as a lever to simulate private investment for a multiplier effect.
I think we have time for 2 short questions. The lady and then probably Vince.
Hi. Given that the theme of inequalities, I was kind of surprised not to see any sessions here on safeguarding.
On what?
Safeguarding and sexual abuse and all of the stuff that's been going on in the sector. Why is that, and what's DevCo doing to stamp down on abuse in the aid sector?
There was no session because nobody has proposed that. You know that the organization is decentralized. We set a subject and then we call to organization to organize debates to propose subjects. So therefore what you have seen is the result of the offer of the proposal, and which we selected those which were most in tune, and nobody was excluded on this subject, but presumably this has been seen not as such but rather as a cross-cutting. So, and by the way, listening to the different debate, I've seen this subject treated maybe not as such but cutting across, so that, you know, there's not a specific choice, let's say.
Colleague from Radio Romania, I think.
Are going to be increased the funds of an investment plan for Africa, and how much do you think? And it's been talked about a Marshall Plan for Africa. What's your opinion about?
Well, actually, you know, we refrain a bit to use the Marshall Plan concept vis-à-vis Africa, because Marshall Plan is linked to war, and here we are not talking about war, and it's talking about, let's say, a big donor in respect to a continent which was destroyed. But this is, you know, maybe secondary, the preference to use it or not. What we are talking about vis-à-vis Africa is something which is more important. A lot of means, but a different way of doing. And the different way of doing is identified with the formula of an alliance, as Juncker said, which comes first. Alliance means to identify what to do, how to do, common priority, common communalities. And on this, there are mutual responsibilities. And on this, there are actions which are taken on both sides. On our side, European Investment Plan in particular, but not only, is certainly a way to do it differently, to progressively work with the private sector, but also with public investment, which should generate more jobs, more economic activity, sustainable, more activity which is function of the implementation of the COP21 agenda, you know. So yes, a lot of money, more money, but in a framework which is not the one of a donor to a beneficiary, but rather a framework in which, in this alliance, we decide the priority and we define what are the communalities. So big exposure, big strategy in the making, because it is an offer and we didn't come with a blueprint. We're changing our toolbox, we're changing our way also working, and then we sit, in particular, with Africa. And the investment plan is at the center of all this.
I think one last question.
Yep.
Yes, hi, Vince from DevEx. Thank you for your availability as well to answer our questions, even at this late stage. So I have a very technical question, which I again ask your forbearance for. We had the investment plan operational report released today, handed out in hard copy, where there's a EFSD guarantee leverage of 1 to 11. That's the leverage that you're talking about, and you're talking about 1.54 billion in guarantees reaching 17.5 billion. Could you talk us a little bit, and 4 million jobs. Can you draw the link and tell us the methodology about how you arrive, how you turn 1.5 billion into 17 billion leverage, and how you, a little bit about the methodology behind the 1 to 11 leverage ratio, and a much less technical question, or a reflection, I suppose, because you asked for our opinion about the 2 days. One of the things I've heard is too many of the sessions are too scripted. The moderators have to read, they have to have interventions from the floor. Everyone can see the panelists checking their emails on the panel. How do we make EDDs more dynamic in the sessions?
On the first question, the method is very simple. It is the figure of the investment which is presented by the development bank. It's not an extrapolation. is mathematical. When we financed the Nazira, for example, under the guarantee, we spent the Nazira guarantee is worth 75 millions, and it is based on an investment of more than 800 million. So it's not an extrapolation, it's the contract. We put, the bank put X amount requiring X guarantee from us. So it's not an extrapolation. This factor is a mathematical one, is based on the contract. When the contract will be public, you can see it. So therefore, what is, let's say, the forecast is another thing. We forecast to have an average of 10 up to 15, okay? Clearly, now we assess that on average is lower. Why this? Because the quantity of the guarantee that is requested for an investment in the Sahel is much higher because higher is the risk. The quantity of the guarantee which is requested for an investment in the eastern neighborhood is lower because the risk is also lower. So it's, and therefore the average is this. Would be useful, I don't know if the report is indicating also the differentiation, but the average is this, 11 something. And this is, for the guarantee side, this is something on which we have to reflect in order to have next cycle, you know, of releasing of the guarantee. Because we knew that in the fragile or the most difficult country, obviously is de-risking. You know, and therefore the market is particularly expensive if a company wants to go and be covered by a guarantee on the free market. And therefore, you know, what is the level of the risk that they ask us to cover is very high. Then in the middle there is a negotiation, because the reason why we set up this independent cell called GTAG is precisely to match their pricing with our pricing. And this is a negotiation. And therefore, how much money from the guarantee you ask in order to put X investment money? They start maybe from a relationship which could be 5. And then we arrive to a negotiation which is 10. You know, this is the technical analysis. But the figures are not extrapolation, are the figures which are matched. We put this, you put this, we put that. So the guarantee is leverage, meaning making possible an investment of 800 million, I don't know, with 75 million of guarantee, is mathematics, is not an extrapolation. Because this is, for the blending, is even more clear, because the blending is not, let's say, an analysis of risk, let's say, a pricing of risk. A blending is typically the fact that a development bank have a good project in portfolio to, let's say, invest in say, solar plant operated, you know, in a given country, and for which they are putting a loan to the country in question of 300 million euros. But then, in order to make these loans possible, they require us to intervene in blending in order to lower the rate of interest that it is applied to the given country, because they cannot afford, for example, to pay an interest rate of 10%, you know. And therefore, to make it possible, we make what we call a loan subsidy, because we intervene with our money, which is not the guarantee, it's the blending, this one, in order precisely to lower the cost of the interest to something which is affordable for the partner countries, making therefore possible this investment, which otherwise will remain purely theoretical. So therefore, also in this case, it's mathematical. We know how much they put, we know how much we put, and the result is the leverage factor.
I'm afraid we need to end there, because colleagues are expecting you in the closing conference.
Fine.
Okay.
I hope I'm clear. If not, there are colleagues that
can be done in writing if needed. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you also for your availability.
Thank you.